Hey everyone, Dylan Welch here. Before we get into our episode, I want to share some really awesome news. Right now, there are so many ways to get involved if you want a job, a career, or volunteer in renewable energy, clean tech, or sustainability. Check out the Mother Earth is Hiring program brought to us by Southern Company. Protecting our planet is a job we all must take on, whether that is something simple like using a reusable water bottle, bag, getting an electric vehicle, solar panels, career change, or just volunteering and taking those little steps to get more involved. Southern Company has made it so easy for all of us to get involved and find a way to get the ball rolling, to commit to taking on a job which is caring for our planet. Check out the Mother Earth page today. Visit our green_org Instagram page for the link in our bio, and we'll also link it in this episode. Thank you so much. Let's kick off the show. Hap, can everybody hear us okay?
Hi, Dylan.
There we go. What's going on, Hap? How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Great, man. Appreciate you coming back. A quick little background about Hap. Hap was the CEO of the North Face, which is probably the biggest sustainable brand company on the planet. So we always feel extremely privileged and honored to have Hap join us. So Hap, thanks again. Let's kind of dive right into it. For everyone watching out there, this is going to be our first kind of interview, fireside chat part of the summit. So we're just going to kind of shoot the shit a little bit and have a conversation. So Hap, tell us a little bit about kind of your background, where you come from, your background in sustainability, and how your career got started.
Well, my career got started because I couldn't work for anybody else. So after I had a MBA from Stanford, I started a company of my own, figuring I had idiosyncratic ideas. And those ideas I didn't find anywhere in the business world. So I figured that if I couldn't work for anybody else, I probably should try it on my own to see what I could do. And those ideas included sustainability. They included triple bottom line, included things like a lifetime product, no planned obsolescence. And the market was just different than that. And particularly when I was looking at CPG companies where I did interviews, they were doing just everything the wrong way, it seemed to me. So the idea was, why not found a company about something I knew, which was the outdoors, because I'd spent my life growing up in Spokane, Washington. And around Spokane, what you do is spend a lot of time hiking, climbing, skiing, whatever. And so I thought that the ideas I had, which was about environment, about sustainability, it was about paying people the same as men, about having the circular economy exist. I thought I'd put excuse me, all of those into a business and the North Face. And so I acquired a couple stores that already existed, so I'd have some cash flow. Well, we developed a line that was initially an outdoor product line. Most people think of North Face now as being an apparel company, but really at the outset, we made sleeping bags and tents, and we made some packs, and then we made a little bit of funky clothing. But the idea behind the whole company was to have a lifetime warranty on our product. I always thought that was better than even recycled materials. To have a company that would basically be committed to making a change in society. I thought we could do that. When I was in grade school, had sort of a checkered career, but they had me only go to school until noon, and then they asked me to go somewhere else in the afternoons, and they gave me directed reading, and I did a variety of things. But in that directed reading, I came across a thing by Thoreau that really resonated with me, in which he said, "In wilderness is the preservation of the earth." And I actually really felt that, because that was the experience I had. And so that idea was what we embedded into the North Face when we started out. And the idea was that people weren't going very far into the wilderness because the equipment was way too heavy. And so by lightening the load, we were able to send people deep into the wilderness with the belief that they would come back and be better stewards of the earth, be better proponents of that. Now, this is a time long ago when the cities were even more tumultuous than they are right now. This is the anti-war movement, the anti-Vietnam. It was people marching in the streets. And that seemed kind of negative to me. And I kind of thought maybe a company could actually be positive, and a company could be one that presented those ideas. And so we created this company. I always said that it was going to be a branded company, but brand to me was not a logo, it's not a tagline, it's not uh, a trademark. A brand is really your DNA and what you stand for. And if you can repeatedly and persistently develop that brand, then over time it becomes something that is really unique. I often tie it to coral. If you watch coral, you don't see it changing over time, but it's gradually growing and becoming more and more complex. And if it's all based on that same ecosystem, it all holds together. And at some inflection point, it is so unique, there's nothing like it. And that's what we were trying to do with our brand in the outdoor business. And those elements included things like sustainability, included circularity, included the environment, included people, and included the company in a way that others didn't develop it. And we did that repeatedly over the years. And we were able to build from a company that had 14 employees when we first started to, now it's, I'm not involved, but I probably wouldn't be able to steward it to the level it is right now. I believe that it's over 3 billion in sales turnover, perhaps a little higher than that. Had a great last quarter. So, but we believe, and they have me come back and talk about it periodically, we believe that the DNA that the company was predicated on, which was quality, disruption, triple bottom line, was a way to build a business that not only was going to be a great business, but was actually going to influence the world around us.
Well, I think it's amazing how you started the company with the idea of sustainability, the lifetime warranty in mind, because now that's extremely common, and being North Face is one of the biggest, most influential brands on the planet. It was probably you that really kind of kicked that off and has a huge impact on what we, see today. Not only that, but now, camping is pretty simple. You have the gear and the equipment at a store, or you can buy it online, which sounds like when you had the original concepts for the business, that wasn't the case. And now, millions of people go camping every year. It's a great way to disconnect, especially in our digital, world we live in. It's really profound to kind of think about the changes that you've made on all of our lives without us even really realizing it. What was kind of the process of you realizing, okay, I don't want to work for any other companies. I want to go into this, this direction, and kind of getting those first couple stores under your belt? Like, what was that like? And then the slow, gradual build of the business from there.
Well, it was chaotic but fun. The belief that I had to do something different also sort of was a challenge, because how do you make sure people know what you're talking about, the other people that you're going to gather around you, and how do you let the world know that you're a different company and not another one? There's a general feeling, there was then and there is now, that many companies basically are exploiters and they don't do good. And so when you say you're doing good, they think it's sort of greenwashing. You're saying, oh yeah, for sure. That's today's marketing campaign, and what's it going to be tomorrow? And so to try to be authentic, to try to put forth that to everyone was the key. And as I said, we went back to kind of the three ideas, the three words that I had, which was disruption, quality, and triple bottom line, and tried to develop stories around that. And the story around quality was basically, we put a lifetime warranty on our product. And a lot of people, particularly financial people, thought that was heresy. They said, how could you possibly do it? You're going to be ripped off by everyone. And I actually am an optimist. I kind of believe in people treating you fairly if you treat them fairly. So I wasn't as worried about that. But I also believe that that was the right way to build a company. We didn't have the statistics then. The statistics are out there now about how much of the material ends up either in landfill or in the oceans, and is pretty frightening. And a lot of that is just because companies don't have the right business model. So we tried to bring that in, and then we tried to develop stories, as I said, so that people, so when I told it, everybody thought it was a homie. Of course he'd say that. And then somebody I told it to, and they repeated it, sounded a little more authentic. Well, when they told somebody and the third party told them, now it sort of became fact. So we tried to develop and spread the word that way. And we were working with word of mouth as a way to grow our reputation. Obviously, it was slower then. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have that. But we were omni-channel from day one. We had our own catalog. We had the stores. The stores provided us cash flow while we were trying to get other people to understand what we were doing. We knew our product was going to be on the surface more expensive because we were making it to be durable and long lasting. But the first sales trip, Jack Gilbert, who worked with me at the beginning, went out, covered the whole West Coast, and came back with an order for 12 sleeping bags. And we were off to the races. So we thought that was pretty big at the time. But right now you'd laugh at that. Nobody would write an order that small. But that's what we were looking at. But our idea was consistently develop that. We would hold everything together with our own ideas, and we would see what we could do. We employed practices that were disruptive, but we thought tied to our mission. We spoke ultimately 14 languages in our factory at all times, so we could hire anybody. And we didn't care where they were from. Because of all the languages, we could employ people even if they didn't know our basic language that well. We hired anybody irrespective of their sexual persuasion. It just didn't make any sense to you. If you wanted the best, that's what you want. You didn't worry about whether they're gay or not, or transgender, and all of that sort of worked into our philosophy. But we had to keep coming back, because when you say slow growth, the numbers were slow, but when you double, which we did each year as we're growing, it means you're almost doubling the number of people you have. And you have to make sure that you get everybody on that same wavelength. So we would spend a lot of time every 2 years in what we call a long-range planning process, where we would come in and talk about where we were going for the next couple of years. And part of that was the quantitative goals, but every company does that. But those aren't really what inspired people, nor were they what made our company great. We'd spend a disproportionate amount of time on the qualitative goals. What do we stand for? What are ideas? What are we pursuing? And in doing that, we were able to bring people in who agreed to us. Now, at the end of those meetings, I would normally end up by saying, now I hope we're so clear with what we did that some of you leave the company. And that's not because you aren't great employees, because we brought you in because you're great. But if you have different ideas, you have to understand that one company cannot do everything. These are the ideas we're going to stand for. If you have different ideas, we'll help you find a place where they execute that sort of strategy, but we don't want you fighting us. And we aren't going to change, at least for the next couple of years, until the next long-range planning. Then dropping back, we would develop stories within that to be able to ratify what we were doing. And one story that was a great one was we were environmentalists from day one. And I can tell you that wasn't warmly received. We were called tree huggers and, granola lovers and whatever. And, we kind of smiled at that, but we thought our mission was actually to be proselytizers for our view. And so we said, well, we're not getting it across the way we're doing it. Can we do something that's going to underscore the personality of the company? And we came up with a negative award. And the negative award was based on writings by Kurt Vonnegut, the American humorist. In his book, The Cat's Cradle, the protagonist was a scientist that had this great invention. What it was going to do was turn all of the water in the world into ice. Now, of course, that was going to destroy the world, but he loved his invention so much, he just had to keep going on. Well, in Vonnegut's honors and the Cat's Cradle's honor, we created the Ice 9 Award, because that's what his invention was called. And each year we would give that to the most environmentally irresponsible, destructive individual or organization in the world. And one year we gave it to the US Congress, and I got all sorts of letters from congressmen's aides. You'd be amazed how many aides they have who can write you. But they say, you don't know what you're talking about. And the answer is, yes, we do. And we're getting our mission across. So we had to pivot a little bit so that people would think maybe we had a sense of humor. If they knew Vonnegut, maybe they would do that, but they would get our mission and maybe listen a little bit more. And so we were constantly putting those ideas in at the beginning. We were constantly working on making sure everybody was on the same page. We were constantly developing new ideas. Anything that was disruptive, we enjoyed because we thought that would get us noticed as well as perhaps be an evolution in the entire industry.
Yeah, I'm sure the people who are calling you, tree huggers aren't laughing or criticizing you anymore when they see you're, turning $3 billion in revenue. So I have a question for you because, one thing that a lot of companies face when they're growing their business is sort of the scaling process. Like, do you remember what it was like to go from, a couple stores to your first million in profit to your first billion in profit or revenue, I should say? And what were kind of what was that process like? And what were some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Well, the biggest challenge is that initially we hired everybody because they were passionate about one of two things, either passionate about the outdoors or passionate about changing the world, which we kind of thought was our mission. And we didn't hire people for the business practices. I felt I could train them I'd run a company, I'd had my MBA from Stanford. I thought I could train those technical things. But what I couldn't train was a passion. Well, as you're growing and you're doubling your employees all the time, you now have to start hiring people more for proven skills and their ability to contribute. And that oftentimes gets away from hiring them because they're passionate about what they're doing. So the challenge was constantly coming up with ideas that would make people really proud of the company or make them really feel like we were doing something worthwhile, and getting them involved in the activities so that we didn't have these silos that exist in many companies where we have marketing and you have sales and you have finance and whatever. So we cross-trained people so they'd work across the company because that was a challenge. Relatively inefficient, I might say, to be able to do that, but so people understood how things were going. We came up with an idea that we shot a catalog every year. So why not do that in some exotic location? So we did it like river running the Zambezi or climbing in Nepal or doing those things. And what we would do is take a selection of people from across the company, and somebody from manufacturing and somebody from marketing, somebody from finance or whatever, and put them together on these teams to go out and do that activity. One, so they could do what they always wanted to do around the company that they couldn't afford to do on their own money maybe. And second of all, to have people spend time together, enjoying themselves in the outdoors, so they would be talking and creating something they're going forward. Now, that was something we did. Not everybody could participate because your catalog shoot would maybe only be 7 people or 8 people, but it would be a way that people would sort of aspirationally get there. But constantly, what we would find is that some of the people that we're adding had to be paired away. We had to ask them to leave, or they chose to leave because they didn't think we were doing it the right way. And that's always a challenge. If you have to fire somebody, it's probably the least enjoyable aspect of your entire career. But in the interest of building an excellent organization, you sometimes have to do that. You want to do it with integrity, and you want to preserve the people's belief in themselves. But as I was saying, when I tell people then of long-range planning that if they didn't agree, they should leave, I was sincere about that. But we could help them land somewhere else so they weren't without a job while they were doing that. But then the challenge, of course, becomes, how do you grow in different ways? How do you seasonality was our first big issue because everything we were selling was in the summer. So we came up with a novel idea of what we were going to do, and that was there was no cross-country skiing on the West Coast. In fact, there was only one place in the U.S. where that was happening at that time, and that was around Stowe, Vermont, where the Von Trapp family from the Sound of Music had a lodge, and they did cross-country skiing. And we said, well, we could do that. Why don't we bring some people out? We knew one of the Von Trapps, Johannes, and we went back and asked him if he'd help us. And we took a couple of his guides, and we came out and we made trails in Yosemite Park. We set up the first West Coast skiing. We then got the mountaineering people at Yosemite to take over the program because we didn't want to manage the program. And then we set up a new business, and that's how we rounded out the seasonality. And then the challenge, of course, is how do you grow at 100% a year and maintain integrity? And because you're constantly battling everything from economics to challenge, whatever. Many of our vendors were trying to exploit us. we had to invest $100,000 in setting up our own lab to be able to ensure that we could deliver the product that we promised, and that ensure that the vendors lived up to the standards we had. And that was something nobody else had done. It was kind of novel, but was how did we execute what we were trying to do? And then, as I said, sometimes you have to pare back some of the people that are part of your organization. A challenge that I never liked that we had to do is we had to refinance on a regular basis because we were growing so rapidly. And you, in the outdoor business, you can only grow 20 to 30% a year on internally generated funds. So that meant we either had to be adding debt or we had to be adding equity. And we were doing one or the other almost every other year. And I was spending half my time being a poorly paid investment banker when my real love was the outdoors. My real love was developing people. My real love was marketing and branding. And I was getting less and less time doing that.
What would you say were some of your biggest wins when you look back? Was it hitting certain financial milestones? Was it seeing the brand become something, internationally recognized? Like, what stands out in your mind as, some of the highest moments that you had at North Face?
Well, I'd hate to say we didn't care about the financial numbers, but we didn't care nearly as much as other companies did about that. What I'm most proud of is that 11 of the people who started with me, who had no business training, ended up running outdoor companies of their own. And they were all brilliant, and they would have done it over time, I presume, anyway. But the training we had and the way we developed it. So one person set up and started a company called Mountain Hardware. Another person ran Birkenstock. Missy Parks started something called Title IX, which is a women performance outdoor line. Somebody ran a company called Thule, which is the ski rack company you have. Other people ran advertising and marketing companies. So the pride we had in that was the fact that the ideas we had, the way you developed a business, spawned other businesses that really grew. And we were proud of that. I think the thing we were also proud of was we received a recognition in one of the national magazines of having the best product quality in the United States. It was Business Week magazine. That I don't know how they measured it, and I don't know how statistically valid it was, but that sort of anointed what we believed we were doing and gave us feedback. But the fact that many people loved working at the company and that we're able to do things probably gave us the biggest reward. And I'll give you just one example of that. We were talking, we drank a lot of beer while we were running the company. We do it after work, primarily because we like drinking beer, but we would do it to talk and discuss what we were doing, what were we doing right, what were we doing wrong. More time to develop on what we were doing wrong. But one of the things we recognized as we were growing is that we ended up spending in our factory a disproportionate amount of time trying to get the subpar people up to par. And it dawned on us over 2 or 3 beers that we were actually ignoring the people who were great performers. So we came up with, okay, what are we going to do? And one of the most important but nonetheless tedious jobs in the factory was the final stage where you trim threads off of a jacket or whatever, so it didn't look like an unmade bed or whatever. Well, these trimmers, all day long clipping the threads is not very fun, but it was the last quality control point that we had. So we took some of those trimmers, so they wore out over time. We bronzed them. I came up with some poem or whatever, and we put it on a pegboard rack, and we gave it to 8 or 10 of the best employees that we had, called it the Golden Trimmer Award. Well, and we were pleased they responded to it well, but frankly, I had almost forgotten about it when 2 years later, I was invited to Gloria Nabelec's home. She received her citizenship papers, and so she was so proud of that what she did was invite some of us over to her home. And we went to her home, and we're having this great dinner with Slivovitz and a whole bunch of other drinks. And there I noticed on her mantle, this is 2 years later, was this award that we dreamed up over a few beers one night just to try to do something. And the fact that they cared that much about it and that we were able on an emotional level to connect with them over thanking them for being a great employee was a tremendous reward. Now, we love putting people on the top of Mount Everest. We love people who would row from the tip of South America to the Antarctic, took great pride in that. although we weren't with them on some of those things, but that was good. And probably the final one I would say with respect to product was there was a famed British climber who was going up to Mount Everest, and he called me up and from England. He said, "Listen, I'm leaving next week for Everest, and I need one of your tents. Is there any way you can get one to me?" I said, "Well, it's fortunate. I'm going to England next week. I'll hand deliver it to you." I was not going to England, but I ended up going there, and I hand delivered it to him so that he could take it with him. It was Chris Monington, who's now Sir Chris Monington. He took it up to Everest, never tested it out before he went there. This came directly off of our production line, and it went to the top of Everest. I was really proud that somebody wanted to do that, but even more proud about the fact that at this point, people believed so much in what we were doing that they would risk their lives based on the trust that we were putting forth.
That's amazing. And just knowing the quality is that good. And also, I think it speaks a lot to your skills as a leader that people, thoroughly enjoyed being there. And also the fact that you encourage them to branch out and start their own businesses. And some of those businesses you mentioned are other household name brands that we all know today, which is really exciting. We've got about 5 minutes left. So Hap, I want to wrap some things up with a final couple of questions. Where do you kind of see sort of the retail industry, because you've been in it, really kind of helps build it? Like, where do you see the sustainable industry when it comes to retail going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Funny you should say that. I gave a presentation a few months ago down in LA, and a young lady was sitting in the front there, and I talked about all these ideas we had at the start of the company, and she looked at me and she said, "You're so old. How do you have all those ideas?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I wasn't always so old, but those ideas are not mine. There are other ideas that are out there. But the reality is, circularity is going to be a driver for the future. If you look at the age of consumers out there right now, and then sort of generally look at what their attitude is, the older people are not very responsible. I got mine and I don't care. When you talk about climate change and their eyes glaze over, you talk about the oceans and the problems that are out there. But when you go to the younger people, what you find is real resonance with those concepts. And so the future is going to be driven by them because they're the consumers of the future. And it's not just going to be sustainability, it's going to be circularity. You're going to design all the way through to repurposing, reusing things that are out there. The companies that recognize that as a driving force, as a megatrend that's out there, that is really what the future is going to be. We're going to go closer to home on production because it's more efficient, less waste, going to be less carbon offset that you have out there that's going to exist. You're going to find that there's going to be lots more use of new materials that are maybe based on science as opposed to based on there. For example, mycelium is a mushroom that can be made into a substitute for leather, much more efficient than cattle in terms of production, but also you don't have the methane going into the air. You don't have the toxic tannins that are out there. You're going to see other things from material science, from biology that exist out there. I'm thinking about the products I know in particular, but the companies that are predicated on circularity, the companies that are predicated on the right employee practices, that the companies that care about the environment are going to be, I think, the ones that are winners in the next decade.
Amazing. And got a couple more minutes. What's just sort of one piece of advice that you could give to our audience or a call to action that when we wrap up the Green Summit, they can go apply their lives, whether it's be more sustainable, run their company better, find more financial success, just anything that we can kind of take away from all of this?
Well, there's a quote that I hang on to from Goethe, the German philosopher, and I would share it with everybody because it's my philosophy, but I think it's a good advice for people. And he said, whatever you can do or believe you can, begin it. Because boldness has genius and power and magic in it. And that's the case. We can sit around all the time. People can listen to your show. They can participate here, and they can talk about it. But nothing is going to be more valuable than actually going out and actually doing something, because that action will bring other action. And so I'd encourage everybody to take that risk, to take the risk of maybe being different, to take the risk of maybe having others criticize you, take the risk of maybe failing, but failing as you move forward.
Amazing. That's been kind of the key theme right here, is going out and make it happen. And Hap is a great example of someone who went out and made it happen without us even realizing it's had a huge influence on our lives. Hap, thank you so much. Love having you on the podcast. Love having you on the Green Summit. Really appreciate your time. You always bring amazing knowledge, cool stories. I love hearing you chat. So thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Well, Dylan, thank you. I feel honored to be on there and participate. I think what you're doing is great. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Man, that's really nice. We're going to just keep it right along moving. Want to thank Hap again. Inspiration to me, role model to me, absolutely doing amazing things. I mean, think about the North Face and how sort of synonymous that is with sustainability, with business, with nature.